Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Great to have you with us today. Talk more about this Steeler thing in a moment. I appreciate the passion of Steeler fans, but you know, I have no dog in the hunt, so I can look at things, I think, a little more objectively. Although the suit jumping up and down today about the Todd Haley thing. You know, I mean, Todd Haley was not jumping up and down when the suit took last year off from play-by-play. Why would he be jumping up and down about Todd Haley losing his job? I don't understand.
I'm just curious who they're going to get, if they're going to stay within house, or if the move was made because someone within the organization had to be a scapegoat. Because Tomlin's not going anywhere. At least Tomlin should have the chance to fix during this offseason what's broken. Well, again, it's their fault offensively for not scoring 46 points. They needed 42. I don't know about you. I always felt 42, you're usually in a pretty good spot. You would think.
That was, usually. Not always, but usually. Oh, I remember when I was a kid once. I was watching a Giants-Redskins game. Jeez, and I want to say it was like 1965, 66, something like that. And the Giants scored 41 points. I think it was 41. And they lost by 29 because the Redskins scored 70 points. My brother and I were sitting there and we're watching this game like, I can't believe this. The final was like 70-41 or something like that. And I remember I looked at it, I said, you'd think on most normal days, 41 kind of works for you. Well, the Steelers scored 42 on Sunday, and it wasn't enough. So you have to ask yourself, on that particular day, which side of the ball was the issue? What would you vote?
Defense. Come on.
Yeah, I would think. Hello? I mean, remember, they gave up now 38 points to the juggernaut known as the Jacksonville Jaguars. That scored, what did they score the week before? 13?
That
10,
sounds
13?
Right. Yeah, something like that.
13. Now, I will say the Ryan Shazier thing. I mean, if there's two players they really could not lose. Remember, last year they lost Cam Hayward. And they felt that affected them, especially in the AFC Championship game with New England last year. And of course, Bell got his usual postseason injury. And then, in big games, Antonio Brown has a tendency to get shut out, it seems, at times, because the Patriots, they did it to him this year. The Patriots usually do a pretty good job of taking away your first option. They took Bell away. They took Brown away in the AFC Championship game. They took him away in part, I think in the regular season game. That'd be fair, right?
Jags beat the Bills 10-3.
10-3.
Yep.
So you're saying that they... But again, the defense created no takeaways. So the offense was never set up. The defense didn't create a lot of 3-and-outs, which meant that the offense didn't have great field position.
No pressure on Bortles.
Right, no pressure, no sacks. It just was not a good defensive day. Now, which then brings back why Mike Tomlin felt he had to go for a very low percentage play and an onside kick. Now, I didn't agree with it. I didn't agree with him going for an onside kick.
Me neither.
But maybe this is one of those cases where communication-wise, because, we all know that Ben's had his ups and downs with Haley and so forth. And, he's, but there's only so many times you can go in front of the meeting and go, well, really, I'm not the one that made that decision. I'm not the one that made, I'm kind of sick of hearing that one, too. All right.
You don't see it on the field between the two. At least I never did. So you figured how much of it was going on behind closed doors, we'll never know.
And we don't know. But
no.
But I am sick of hearing I'm not really like, look, you're the quarterback, for goodness sakes. You're the quarterback.
That's what I was thinking Sunday afternoon. It's like, oh boy, he's throwing Todd under the bus again. It's like, yeah, you brought you're a two-time Super Bowl champion. You have a little bit of clout. You can change something on the fly.
Oh, yeah, but again, Todd Haley's not the one that tried to force the pass in against the Patriots. Ben was. Right. Ben had control as to whether he should overthrow that play when it's a one-man route. You can look at it and go, not there, get rid of it. I mean, you could talk about the play call all you want in the Patriots game, but that's him. That's bad judgment by him. I mean, that's bad judgment by Ben Roethlisberger in the Patriots game, right? One-man route, 3 Patriots. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, we talk about this in basketball all the time. He's 1-on-3. Now, what do you think he should do if he's 1-on-3? Probably pull the ball back. Well, you're 1-on-3 in a pass route, over the middle, no less. I say we live another down. What do you think? Quick show of hands. Especially somebody who's been around the block like he has. And remember, I think it was after that game he talked about the play call again, didn't he? Well, that's what I was told to do. Well, they didn't tell you to throw it into coverage. I'm sure in practice they told you no matter what the route is, whether it's that route or something else, get rid of it. Patriots, to their credit, had it covered and the whole thing. I kind of felt like, especially in they talk about not having a quarterback sneak in and things like that. It's interesting. Now the Shazier thing plays a big role because he creates a lot of dominoes. He's the one speed linebacker out there. He's the one linebacker. He was the one speed linebacker he had out there. He was the one guy that actually I think is pretty good in pass coverage. I don't really think the Steeler linebackers are very good in pass coverage. I don't know about you. I mean, I don't. And not having great linebackers in pass coverage is also a domino to a secondary that's not very good. By NFL standards, obviously, they're not really a great secondary. But there's a lot that comes into play, and it's interesting because I feel like the Patriots are actually vulnerable. I don't think this is their best team. I feel like Brady in the last month has been good, but hasn't been great. Brady's been good, but he hasn't been exceptional. You kind of feel in some ways that the window is they could be had.
Oh, especially after their 2-2 start and got taken behind the woodshed, came with Kansas City and back in September, and the defense was extremely suspect, but they've turned it around. It's just it's a complete opposite. Patriots, terrible start. They got all the ducks lined up in the row. What could be a terrific finish? Steelers, terrific start, terrible finish.
Well, I mean, look, the Patriots have something built in, though, that's pretty good, though. I mean, you can go 2-0 against the Jets, 2-0 against the Bills, and this year they split with Miami. But normally the Patriots start out the season, you feel like they got 6 wins. Right? So if they can go 6-4 in the other 10 games, they're 12-4. Now, the Steelers haven't had that over the years. Baltimore usually has been pretty good. Cincinnati's kind of hung in there. Cleveland's just awful. But this year, Cincinnati wasn't very good. I thought Baltimore was no better than okay. and the Steelers were the dominant team. So I kind of felt in that area that the Steelers actually had a favorable schedule because their division wasn't great. I mean, sometimes you hit it in the division where the other three teams really aren't that good, and the Patriots have had that advantage for many, many years now where they really had a minimum of 5 and occasionally 6 wins built into their schedule just based on division. Now, that's not their fault. The other teams just aren't that good, but that's why you play divisional games, right? And that's, if you want to know what has helped them, there's been many elements that have helped the Patriots over the years get home field advantage. A, their own skill level, how they're coached, how smart they are. They're, Brady, a lot of different things. They've won a lot of games. But they've also, because of their division, it has allowed them to accumulate wins, which is, while the Steelers, for example, they haven't had home field advantage against the Patriots in the playoffs. Well, why? Because, you've got to play Baltimore twice. Well, that's a little bit better than anybody you're playing in your division. You got to play Cincinnati twice. Well, there's especially, people can complain about Dalton all they want. But it's not like Cincinnati's hasn't been a playoff team under Dalton. What are they, a playoff team, 3-4 years in a row before this year? I mean, Flacco and the Ravens have won the Super Bowl in the last 4 years. All right? So now that's 4 games, 25% of your schedule against some pretty good teams. Now let's go to the AFC East. I mean, how good? I mean, I realize Buffalo made the playoffs this year, and Miami made it last year. The Steelers blew them out. But in reality, how good has that division been? For the most part, the Patriots have been able to pencil in 6 wins, which is 38% of their schedule every year, because they're just not just a little bit better, they're a lot better than those 3 teams. Which means if they go 6-4 in their other 10 games, they're 12-4. They go 7-3 in those games, they're 13-3. And that's how you end up getting home field advantage, because the division, I think, has actually been a big plus of getting them home field advantage over the years. Because Buffalo for years hasn't been really good. The Jets for years have not been very good. And the Dolphins for a long period of time have been stagnant. Now, you can't sit there and change what division you're in. I mean, Seattle did because they went to the NFC at one point. Okay. But that's something that also is rarely talked about. Their divisional games, which you have to play. I mean, that the Steelers have not had home field advantage at times in the playoffs because their division's tougher. I mean, to get through the AFC North, if you go through that 4-2, you've had a heck of a year, I think. Now, it's a little bit different this year. Cincinnati wasn't quite as good this year. I felt Baltimore, despite what they did late, still was not quite as good this year. And Cleveland gives you 2 wins every year. So if you can get through that with splits against Baltimore and Cincinnati, and you're 4-2. You're doing pretty well. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, Sean, but I think that's been actually, to me, the biggest detriment to the Steelers getting home field, because what's home field been decided by? Usually a game?
Sure.
Yeah.
And it could be like a swing game. It could be like a primetime Baltimore game, or lately the last 3-4 years a Monday night Cincinnati game, either home or on the road.
Right. And I think that's something that's never talked about. The Patriots division has really, now, look, again, New England's extremely well coached. New England has a great quarterback. For the most part, New England's played really good defense. They're very precise. They don't make a lot of mistakes. We've praised New England about this the entire time. All right? But it doesn't hurt at all when you've had 6 games built in through no fault of their own. That's the division they reside in, where it's not murderer's row. Well, that's 38% of your schedule. And if you're getting through that, at worst, 5-1. I mean, when's the last time the Patriots were 4-2 in the division? I mean, think about it. When's the last time the Patriots went 4-2 against the division? They were 5-1 against the division this year, right? They beat the Jets twice, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and they split with the Dolphins, and they beat the Bills twice.
Yep.
So they're 5-1. How many games did the Patriots win this year? 13?
Yes.
Okay, so that meant they go 5-1 in their division, which meant they went, 8-2, which is really good, obviously, in the other 10 games. Now it's 8-2. Now, what if they go 4-2 in the division? And they end up with 12 wins. Wouldn't the Steelers have had home field? Now, obviously, they did have to get past Jacksonville. I got that. But also, the Steelers, as the number one seed, would not have played Jacksonville. Right?
Mm-hmm.
See, there's a lot of dominoes here that fall into play, and something that has really worked to the Patriots' advantage for years. The road goes through Foxborough. It goes through Foxborough. It goes through Foxborough. Well, part of the reason it's gone through Foxborough is they've been able to go click, 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 click 6 times during the course of the year against what might be the weakest division in the NFL. And I'm talking long term. Every year it changes as to who's strong and who's weak. But in the last 18 years, what might be the weakest division in the NFL?
Tom Brady limited in practice today. Team injury report says he has a right hand. We report, you decide.
Well, I watched the game last week. I know he has a right hand. But have you ever thought of it that way in the schedule? You can talk, and look, they get a first place schedule all the time. So they're going to play the other divisional champions. So you're going to play 25% of the schedule is going to be against first place teams with a first place schedule, which means they'll play the first place team last season from the AFC West, the AFC North, the AFC South, and then obviously there's one division they play against from the NFC, which includes last year's champion. Okay? So 25% of their schedule is going to be against teams that finished in first place the year before. That's 25%. But 38% of the schedule is going to be against AFC East teams. Okay, now we're up to 10 games. Now we're down to 6. And two are going to be against the second place team. 2 are going to be against the third place team, and 2 are going to be against the fourth place team. Because you have to play one team from the AFC as a full division. So they're going to play 4 first. They will play 3 seconds, 3 thirds, and 3 fourths along the way. Well, it's actually more than that because they have to play twice. So they're going to play 4 thirds, 4 fourths, and 4 seconds. Because you have to play whomever's second in your division twice, whomever's third in your division twice, whomever's fourth in your division twice. But it turns out that the AFC East has been, of all the divisions, the one that, the Jets had a little period of time where they were decent. The 2 Sanchez years with... But I think that's a factor. I think that's a factor. And again, Troy, I respect your opinion, and I understand how the grades and people talk about, the Steeler offensive line. But honestly, ask yourself, and don't give me this, he's a patient runner. That's taking it to a whole new level. I've seen patient runners my whole life. I watched Kurt Warner become patient. I watched Saquon Barkley become patient. I watched Kajana Carter become patient along the way where, boom, they kind of set up their block and go. Kind of standing and holding and waiting takes patience as a running back to a completely different level. That's a completely, don't you? I mean, have you ever seen a guy run like that?
I never have.
I mean, I never in my life have seen a guy run like that.
He has a unique style that I really can't compare to anybody else.
I've never seen anybody run like that.
Mm-mm.
And I think the reason why is that when he gets the ball, there's no place to go. Now, there's no penetration, and then, boom, they're able to open up a crease for him. Terrific. It works. I understand that. But why aren't there any initial, because, look, if there's a hole, I can guarantee you go, hey, this is awesome, I'm going. Don't give me the Pro Football Focus and the patience and all that stuff. Ask yourself why he has to do that. Because I can take my word, he doesn't really want to do that. He's kind of looked around and go, okay, we'll make this work. And to their credit, they give up no penetration. They don't, and then they're able to turn people. I mean, so they're a physically strong group. But there's something where you just sit back and say, I've never seen this. Why am I seeing this? And I'm seeing this because, A, it works. But, B, how come there's no initial hole? It's a legitimate question. And, Troy, here's the problem. You've never heard it brought up before. That's the problem, Troy. Nobody's ever brought it up. You've got to ask yourself why. Why? Now, you can rationalize about all pros and patience and things like that. But no offense, there's a reason you don't see it. It's not normal. I mean, if I don't see if it's such a great way of running, why don't we see other people doing that? I mean, yeah, he gets yardage. There's no doubt about that. He's a heck of a running back. And yeah, again, Pouncey and DeCastro, I think, are terrific. Remember when they drafted DeCastro, how big I was in DeCastro. I was huge on him. And I think he's fulfilled that. I think Pouncey's good. I think the other guys, if I'm scouting Foster and I'm scouting Gilbert, I would put on the scouting report JAG. JAG. You want to know what that means? Just another guy. I think they're good. I think those guys are good, not great. Now, when you're drafting where the Steelers are, the problem the Steelers have been so good over the years. Where they're kind of it's not the Atlanta Hawks, but they're never going to get a top 10, 15 pick. So you're going to get like a 25 pick, which then means you should line up to get a 57 pick, which then means if things fall into place, you get an 89 pick. And after a while, that does add up to, now look at Jacksonville. We got the third pick, the fourth pick, the seventh pick, whatever. Well, after a while, if you keep those guys, you got guys. Remember I talked about Detroit? Detroit's been drafting so high all the time, they finally got decent enough to make the playoffs.
Well, Suit and I were kind of going through draft order today. Okay, we're trying to figure out who should they take first, who should they take second. Well, maybe when are they going to pull the trigger and get a quarterback? The problem is this year, I would safely think 6 quarterbacks are going to go in the first round, right?
Yeah, and it's got to be the right kind of guy. I mean, to be honest with you, you got Rosen, Darnold, Mayfield. Interesting. Denver, by the way, is coaching the Senior Bowl, their coaching staff. They specifically requested Mayfield to be on their team. I thought that was interesting. All right. Then you've got Allen from Wyoming. There's some things about him I like, and there's some things where I look at him, I'm like, and see, that might be the guy that's available when the Steelers pick. Now, in the first round, would I feel comfortable in them picking him? And I've seen Allen in person. It's not like I'm just looking at a tape. I saw Allen play in person. Now, albeit it was a year ago, and I saw him in person against Eastern Michigan. You're like, why were you watching that game? Because I had to speak to the Penn State Club of Michigan that night. And I'm like, okay, well, I see something. He moves decently. He's got a decent arm. He kind of throws off balance a little bit at times. He's not squared up enough. I don't know. And that might be like the kind of guy that's available when they pick. When do the Steelers pick? 24, 25, 26? I mean, they got to be down the list again.
26, 28, right around in there.
26 to 28. See, and that's eventually that stuff catches up to you. Getting a Bell in the second round, wow. Getting a guy like Antonio Brown, wow. I mean, they've drafted when they've picked some big time players outside of the first round. DeCastro was a great first round pick. Pouncey was a great pick. You know, when they got Cam Hayward, I'm like, oh boy, that's a winner. Remember what I said about Shazier?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then when they drafted Artie Burns, I went, no. When they drafted Golson from Ole Miss, I said no. I mean, I've usually been pretty honest about what I thought about the Steeler draft. I mean, there's certain guys they picked. I went, whoa, big time pick. Remember how big I was on Le'Veon Bell when they picked him? I said that. They said that's a big time running back there. I was big on Le'Veon Bell, and he's turned out better than I thought he would be. Because Bell is a better receiver. Bell is better in blitz pickup than I thought he would be. He runs about the way I thought. Of course, he's lost weight, too. He's run about the way I thought he would run in the league in terms of running yardage. But he is much better in blitz pickup than I ever imagined he would be. He's got to be – he might be the best running back in the NFL on blitz pickup. And I think he's the best running back in the league as a receiver. Because Le'Veon Bell runs legitimate routes. He's the best receiver I've seen because, you know, linebacker can't really cover him. Safety, because he runs legitimate routes, has trouble covering him. He's not just one of those float out of the backfield circle. You know, Yeldon made the big play the other day on the 40-yard pass play. That's the way most running backs run routes, where they kind of float out and they're an option, they get it and go. Okay? And usually that plays 5 or 6 yards unless you got Artie Burns in the center of the field going, oh, am I supposed to be over there? I hope somebody covers me up. Bell goes, boom, cut, go. And you're like, whoa. You watch the All-22 on the Steelers, and you watch him run routes. That is a running back who runs routes like a receiver. Man, I mean, he really is a special talent. All right. Dave Spadaro coming up in a moment as we continue on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Sometimes the truth hurts. The first 2 weeks of January with sub-zero temperatures put a hurtin' on Sunbury Motors sales. Well, bundle up and save while SMC delivers the biggest discounts imaginable. Sunbury Motors Ford wants to see you in a brand new Escape or F-150. Save up to $8,000 on new Escapes starting at $20,825. Or take up to $14,500 off a new Ford F-150 starting at $25,969. Sunbury Motors Kia doesn't want you to pay a dime in interest for your new Kia. Finance a new Sorento, Sportage, Optima, or Forte for 0% for 75 months. No one has 0% for 75 months but Kia. Sunbury Motors Hyundai wants you with America's best warranty. 10 years, 100,000 miles. Plus, you can save up to $3,807 on a new Santa Fe and $3,112 on a new Hyundai Tucson. Bundle up and save at Sunbury Motors Ford, Kia, or Hyundai in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury, and routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf.
Taking your calls at 800-795-9565. This is The Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Joined now by Dave Spadaro, Eagles Insider. Dave, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Hey, Steve. Thanks so much. Great to be with you.
Well, it's great that we have an opportunity to talk this week because that means the Eagles are in it. Dave, when you look at
exactly.
Let's get to some guys that have put themselves in a great spot. When you look at veterans like Fletcher Cox and Malcolm Jenkins who have now put themselves into this spot, and you see the level that they're playing at to help the team get there, what does that tell you about them as professionals and as motivated people?
Yeah, I mean, they're really elite players. And, you know, if you think back a season ago, Fletcher Cox was heavily scrutinized and at times criticized. Big contract, didn't put up the big numbers, and not the consistent performer. And then he goes out on Saturday night against the Falcons and really wrecks the interior of that offensive line. And the same with Malcolm. Malcolm's been so durable, so steady, such a leader for this football team. And let's be honest here, Steve, we've talked in the past. nobody expected the Eagles to be in this position. And certainly after Carson Wentz went down, nobody thought the Eagles would get to this spot. So it requires the entire team. It requires players who are leaders, and Cox, Jenkins among them.
You know, guys like Cox, and then what has Timmy Jernigan meant to Fletcher Cox?
You know, it's interesting because Tim doesn't really put up the big numbers, but he does disrupt and he does open up opportunities for other players. And he played a really good game against the Falcons, really got inside and disrupted their run game. And he's just got quickness off the ball. He gets up the field. He takes some attention away from Fletch and from his other line mates. And it's a very good mix, those two. They play off each other very nicely. I mean, it takes the village against the run, and the Eagles lead the NFL in run defense. And that's something that in this game on Sunday night, if they can stop Minnesota's run game in its tracks and then get in Case Keenum's face, they have a chance to win the game.
No question about that. We've talked about how the Eagle pressure really aided the corner play, not the safeties. The safeties have been terrific. We just talked about Jenkins in particular. But we felt early in the season that the Eagles' rush and line really aided the corners. Have you now seen, especially with the return of Ronald Darby, have you now seen the corners doing a better job of holding their own and not needing as much from the defensive line?
Yes, in a way. I mean, I thought they played really well last week. I'm actually really intrigued by this matchup because Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs are big-time players, and I hope people don't sleep on them. Everybody's focus has been kind of on Case Keenum and on what they're doing, but I just think that an underrated part of Minnesota is that pass game and the receivers. And Thielen is a Pro Bowl receiver. He's dynamite on third downs. I think it's a really tough matchup for the Eagles, and I think that this is the kind of game when you've got a good offensive line in front of Keenum, you've got Keenum who's got the ability to buy time in and out of the pocket, the cornerbacks are going to be severely tested.
And it's more than that because Thielen is terrific. Diggs is a special talent. But Kyle Rudolph at tight end is the kind of guy that's going to get some single coverage, and you've got to handle him.
Yeah, and he's a big guy. He's not very fast. He's a great red zone threat, but his size, you're basically being asked to guard a power forward, and that's what Kyle Rudolph is. And so the Eagles have done a good job against tight ends this year. I mean, look, the defense has done a really nice job all around. And honestly, Steve, I believe the defense has to carry the Eagles to a win. I just think this is going to be an old-fashioned slugfest, another 15-10 kind of game, and hopefully the Eagles have the 15.
Right, and now let's get to the quarterback, Nick Foles. What did you think of his performance against the Falcons?
It was a solid performance. He loosened up as the game went along. He gained more confidence as the game went along. He made the right decisions on those run-pass options. He got Alshon Jeffrey involved. I like that. On the downside, the Eagles were just 1 of 3 in the red zone, and they can't have that kind of performance. Not his fault, but Jay Ajayi fumbled on the first drive. So I think in this game Nick's got to be a bit more of a dangerous threat down the field, tough defense to dink and dunk against. And I just think the Eagles have to be really risky with their game plan. I think they have to be really challenging, really daring, and let Nick go down the field at times. Now, the weather is going to play into the offense's favor a little bit more. Temperatures in the mid to upper 30s when game time arrives, kickoff arrives. So that should help both quarterbacks. It's just this defense is so darn good in coverage. They can generate pass rush with their 4 men and cover with 7. I think it's going to be real tough times for the Eagles offense.
Yeah, and that's the key. They can get with 4. That was the Steelers' problem with Jacksonville. 4 guys could beat 5 on a consistent basis, and that left 7 to cover. When you look at Harrison Smith, we talked about Jenkins. How good a safety is Harrison Smith?
A great safety. Does it all, covers everybody. It'll be tough for Zach Ertz to get open in his game, and Zach Ertz, obviously, a Pro Bowl tight end, somebody who really the Eagles rely upon so much. Sendeo is also a very good safety. I mean, there's really no weaknesses with the Vikings defense. They have it all, and that's why they're the number one defense in the NFL. So the Eagles will have to, A, execute the basics, win at the line of scrimmage, B, have great ball security, and then we saw Doug Peterson introduce a couple of wrinkles last week in the run game. I expect a couple of more wrinkles in the offense this week, and again, if the Eagles have a chance to make a play, they got to make it because they're not going to have very many opportunities.
Dave, you've now had a good opportunity to really watch Jay Ajayi up close. It's one thing to watch him on tape or see him in a game in person. Now you've seen several games. What kind of running back is he, and what does he mean to the Eagles' attack?
He's the most explosive running back they have. He runs with power as well. And if he could curb his lack of ball security, the Eagles would really have a dynamite threat there. However, I believe he's fumbled 4 times with the Eagles. That is to be worried about. That is a cautionary flag that, especially in this level of game, you cannot have. I expect Jay to be the main ball carrier. I expect Corey Clement to come in and touch the ball in the passing game, provide pass protection, and then LeGarrette Blount to be the hammer in the short yardage game. But look, if the Eagles are going to make big plays in the run game, it's coming from Jay Ajayi.
In the fourth quarter with the lead, how important does LeGarrette Blount become?
Everything is. Isn't it incredible, Steve, how every morsel of the game is so important? But certainly to have somebody who runs with power like Blount does and converting that 4th down into a touchdown on Saturday night with a great block from Brandon Brooks and a great block from Trey Burton, so vital. And look, LeGarrette's got the playoff experience, won a Super Bowl last year, won one prior to that. I like the mix in the backfield. I think they are the kinds of running backs who can not necessarily wear down, but they can have success against the Vikings defense.
Dave, I know you have TV to do. I appreciate the time you gave us today. I appreciate it very much.
Steve, I always love coming on. I wish I could do it longer. This week has been wonderfully busy, frantic, and there's more to come. So I'm very excited about the Eagles being in this position because, again, nobody thought they were going to be here. And I probably didn't either after Carson Wentz went down.
Ah, the glories of time management when things are going well.
Exactly.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Steve.
I know the feeling, Dave. Where suddenly you're sitting there in a particular week, and now you've got 17 to 20 radio stations like, can you do this show, do this show, do this show? Like, okay, I can give you 7 minutes here, I can give you 8 minutes there.
Yeah, but still, when I reached out to him earlier this week, I heard back from him in a minute, which I did not expect, which is... We appreciate that
guy.
more than he'll ever know. We appreciate that.
Great guy. One quick note on good. I want to go back to the Le'Veon Bell thing for a moment. Here's why no one questions what's happened, because they've been successful with it. All right? The Steeler running game has been successful because it works.
So kind of like if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality.
Right. That's why no one has questioned it. That's why it is a shock to the system when someone sits back and says, no, wait a minute. Can we look at this analytically for a moment? Why does he do that? Now, it works. So if it works, you keep on doing it. And Troy's absolutely right. They'll get 5, 6, 7 yards of doing it. But it's abnormal in terms of how it usually works. Take a moment and ask yourself why it is abnormal. All right? Why does he have to do that? See, I just brought up just a question where, because believe me, it's a legitimate question. All right? You just watched Jacksonville, because remember, the Steelers did damage on chunk plays in that game. Big pass to Bryant on 4th down. Big pass to Brown on 4th down. With the wheel route play, big play to Le'Veon Bell. Did they get another big play for a touchdown? They scored, 6 touchdowns in the game? That's 3 of them right there. Normally, you get 3 plays like that. Wasn't there a 4th one in the game? I guess what Brown had. Brown had 2.
Oh,
Brown had 2. Brian had 1. Bell had 1. That's 4 of their 6 touchdowns were on chunk plays.
Yeah, Ben had 3. 3 of the passes were on fourth down for scores.
But I'm saying though that when you do that, you win the game, because if you get chunk plays like that, you are in great shape. All right, but Jacksonville didn't blitz. Why? Because they own the line of scrimmage. I mean, when you can get pressure with 4, you're in really good shape defensively, normally. Now, again, they gave up 42 points. They weren't that awesome. But a lot of these drives were extended to fourth down all the time, because the Steelers couldn't get 10 yards in three downs.
Steelers will have another opening to fill on their coaching staff. We just received word a little while ago. Wide receivers coach Richard Mann is retiring. He coached in the NFL for 33 years, 5 with the Steelers.
Well, that's Yeah, I mean, because obviously, Brown turned in a shabby year, so obviously they have a problem in that spot, too. It must be a joy to go to practice every day, and I'm looking out and I see Antonio Brown. You got to be going back to your locker at night when you're done in the coach's locker room, going, I am really a lucky dude. We'll come back with more in a moment on News Radio 1070 WKOK. I was reading this article today about how the NFL has plans that if the Vikings win, to mitigate the home field advantage. What are you going to do? Stop someone from Eden Prairie from buying a scalp ticket to go? I mean, really? What are you going to do? Well, we have to make sure the 2 practice facilities are equitable. Excuse me, weren't you going to make the 2 practice facilities equitable to the teams regardless of who was there?
Like they're worried they're going to be like these impromptu like skull chants are going to be coming out of the crowd when something else is supposed to be happening during the pregame? Well, the whole logistics thing you brought up about a week or so ago about players staying here and there and hotel issues and we got to fill them up and...
Look, the NFL took the home team's 15% of tickets and divvied them up equally. Home teams stay in hotels rather than their homes. Guess what? If I'm Zimmer, I'm in a team meeting. I said, we're checking into the hotel on the day they tell us. And after that, you can go home.
Sleep in your own bed, boys.
Right. What? Excuse me, is Roger Goodell going to do bed check? I mean, come on.
That would be funny.
I mean, seriously, I would look at them and go, look, Friday night before the game, all right, we all have to be there, and then we're going to do meetings on Saturday like we always do. I would, all right, and guess what? If they want to find me, something tells me the fans would go, here you go.
Come on, first home team that gets a Super Bowl. Throw us a mulligan. Let us sleep in our own bed.
It wouldn't even be lettuce. We're going to find you. Go ahead. I'm letting them go home. We checked into the hotel. We did exactly what you said. Here's the key.
You're listening to News Radio 1070 WKOK Sunbury. You can hear us anywhere in the world with the Sunbury Broadcasting Corporation app.